I guess we like to kid ourselves that it's never really gonna happen. Honest, I'm sure we do. I'm sure I even kid myself as well. Let me just tell you what I'm talking about, okay? Just reaching for something behind here. I'm talking about the NHS. I'm talking about the service that prescribes me and my wife these, well, in this case, insulin needles. Yeah? Let's show you some of the other things that they prescribe. I don't pay anything for them, nor does my wife. We've paid national insurance. It's our own insurance. I've paid into it since I was 16 years old. Okay, so I've paid in. I get this on the NHS. Let's look at these, shall we? Yeah. These babies. Blood testing strips. I'm forever testing my glucose so that I can be safe to drive. I can be safe to go out and walk around without going hypo, i.e. sugar too low, just dropping down, fainting for no reason, and people walking around me going, oh, that's interesting, must be drunk. Yeah. So, I mean, I could get the insulin syringes out and all that lot, but forget it. I mean, look at some other things as well, right? Not only diabetic me, but treated for one or two of the complications. I won't be able to show you all of the tablets, but look, they're in there. That would be morning, and bringing them into shot, that would be evening. Evening and morning tablets. Now, if I can just hold them up to the camera, look at that little lot. That is, well, near enough just, well, it's about another 5 days supply of tablets. All those drugs. Very expensive. Specialist drugs for my heart. I have one drug that actually I have a stent in there called a drug-eluting stent. And this is a real magic drug, man. It works with the stent to stop it blocking up again. Cheaper drugs, obviously. Aspirin, just to keep the blood thin. Beta blockers, ACE inhibitors. But there is expense. Yeah. Paid for by the NHS. Yeah. I paid in. Sharon paid in. Our parents paid in. You are probably paying in at the moment through national insurance. Your parents, when they had you, paid in. Perhaps you were an NHS baby. Perhaps you were one of the first, or at some point you were delivered by NHS doctor, midwife, or whatever. Well, since Bevin brought in the health service, didn't cost your parents anything, did it? Didn't have to pay to have a baby. Even if it was just a visit from the midwife, you didn't have to. All right, I know you lot do pay some costs, yeah? Because I'm over 60 years old, but also because, even prior to that, because of my diabetes, I was exempt from prescription charges. But anyway, over 60 years old, I'm exempt from prescription charges now. Some of you may be in the same position, but you can see what I'm about to get at. Once the NHS has gone, we're finished. I'm finished. I'm as good as dead. Yes, I'm a carer. I receive benefits for my wife. And yes, that's what I do. That's fine. Yeah. I also contribute to the community, and I'm shortly going to be getting involved with a few more community groups as well. But that's fine. That's what we do. But without the NHS, and obviously they're going to just cut back on benefits for the likes of us, because actually they probably rather that we just die without healthcare and these drugs I was talking about and those needles to inject insulin. I'm sure it would be much easier for the Tory government, led I'm sure by Boris Johnson, that we just died. Yeah? When you find our bodies in our houses, when you're walking over us in the street, you might think, well, tough luck, really, but you know, I'm a hard worker. I get a wage. I make so much a month. I was looking on Facebook a moment ago about a guy in America called John. John, you may have seen the post. John was a restaurant manager in America, right? So we're not talking someone kind of lower down the chain, yeah? We're talking about a man who managed a restaurant, reasonable salary. Think about what restaurant managers are probably paid, I don't know, at McDonald's or whatever now in the UK. That kind of salary. You really thought he should have been able to afford those premiums, didn't you? Well, he kind of could when he was on his mum's health insurance, but then there came a time when she had to kick him off and he couldn't afford the premiums. And also there's other expenses on top of that. Usually they bill you separately for your sort of your treatment, your drugs and your care, and they give you another bill for your accommodation, I don't know, physically when you're in a hospital. You get two separate bills. So they were incidental expenses, he calls them, that were not even covered by the insurance that he paid in for. And these came to thousands of dollars a time. So poor old John, and bearing in mind he was not badly paid, yeah? Poor old John began to cut back on the insulin. Yeah, I do that because that's kind of how we put it in a pen and we inject it, yeah? Find a place in your stomach or your leg or something, and then you hear the thing click. The reason it clicks is so that when people are going blind, complication of diabetes, by the way, you can hear the clicks and know how much insulin you're giving yourselves. Talking to America, Vietnam War movies, 20 clicks to Saigon. So John cut back. And the thing is that when we do that, our diabetes is not properly controlled. Let me describe a state to you which is called ketoacidosis. It's a state that will kill us if we allow ourselves to get into this position. Now let's imagine that John, or any one of us, finally got to a place where they had no access to insulin. None at all. We go into a state when we don't inject the insulin called ketoacidosis. Effectively, the insulin, if you like, is the key to the lock that unlocks the energy in our food. Inject the insulin, opens up the energy from the meat and potato pie, the fish and chips, you know, the chicken tikka masala or whatever that you had, releases all that slow release energy into your bloodstream through fast and slow acting, complex and simple carbohydrates. Without the key, none of the energy gets released. In fact, without the key, you start throwing the food back up again. You start what's called polydipsia. Sounds like the name of a parrot, doesn't it? Hello, I'm polydipsia. Yeah. So you start drinking like crazy. Your body's trying to flush out the byproducts of this diabetic ketoacidosis. We produce ketones. The body tries to excrete them in the urine, but it can't. So that immediately begins damaging the liver. It begins damaging the kidneys. It does further damage to the vessels in the eyes. It'll start to affect your circulation. You can start to lose feeling in your feet and have foot amputations and stuff like that. But otherwise, just left even for a few days, maybe even a few hours, if this isn't reversed, and it's actually very difficult to reverse once you've got into it, you will be dead. You'll die. Now let's just take this down a little bit as well, okay? Let's say you think to yourself, well, surely they've got to do something special for us. Those of us on 0 hours contracts, they've got to make exceptions for us, haven't they? I mean, they must. I mean, if we only know that on week 1 we get so many pounds, but on weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, we might just work 1 hour. We don't get more than £20. So how do we pay for the private medical insurance on the weeks when we don't work and don't get paid? What do we do? How do we pay the premiums? For crying out loud, it's really simple, isn't it? Sod how you feel about Brexit. Sod anything else. Elect Jeremy Corbyn. Elect a Labour government. Only through them will we keep the NHS. Oh, you say, well, don't worry about it. I can sell my house to pay for the insurance. So, well, yeah, and then the house maybe you were planning to leave to your kids or something. Or in fact, if you have been lucky enough to even buy a house that you own, if you've been lucky enough to even get on the property ladder, if you're a young millennial, yeah? Once the NHS is gone, it's never coming back. I plead with you, vote Labour. Save the NHS. Save lives. Save your own and your family's